Good afternoon, everyone. Yvette Bologna here with NAWBO Houston, and this is Let's Talk Advocacy, and we're wrapping up 2023. So we want to talk to you about not only the wonderful holidays that you're all having, but also about the things that we need to or we should be aware as business owners for 2024. And the first one is that, independent contractor regulations have changed, and they are in the last stage. The proposed rule that this all started in 2021, and with a new proposal, and then it got adopted. A rule got adopted. It got shut down by a court because it didn't go through the proper procedures. Then it went to the comment procedure, and that phase, and the comment phase ended, and then the rule was adopted, and it was sent to the White House in October, and that's where it is right now. It's waiting for the signature of the president, but it's going to go in effect in 2024, and you're going to be ready for it. And I'm going to give you the 6 criteria that you must address when classifying, when deciding whether someone you're hiring or you're contracting with for your on behalf of your company is an employee or an independent contractor. That decision you must know, because it has different tax implications, and it has employment benefits implications. So it is very important for you to be crystal clear as to what the type of contract, the nature of the contract that you're entering into with that individual is. So the 6 criteria are, if when evaluating whether you are hiring an employee or an independent contractor, you will take into account under the new rules whether there's an opportunity for profit or loss, depending on the types of skills that you are hiring. Um, Number 2 is, what's the investment by the worker and the company. If there tends to be no investment, you're even supplying the notebooks and the pencils and everything that the contractor is using to do the work. If you're supplying it as a company, then that is looking more like an employee rather than an independent contractor. So if the independent contractor is bringing tools and materials to perform the service or the tasks that are part of the service, then you're more on the independent contractor side. So the third factor is the degree of permanence of the work relationship. This is very important because independent contractors cannot be hired forever and ever and ever without the relationship being reviewed at some point. So that is why it's so important for that relationship. If you are intending to hire an independent contractor, that is why it's so important for you to use a contract, a written contract. Uh, and let me clear this up. These are regulations that are for Fair Labor Standards Act, because the IRS has their own set of rules as to what they consider an independent contractor and an employee. So we're dealing with the Labor Department's rules and regulations, not the IRS's. The IRS's has another set of rules that you should also look into before deciding to hire an independent contractor. So when you are entering into a a contract with an independent contractor, there has to be like an end to the service or the task, or the contract must be finite. It's not an open contract, a forever and ever contract. If there are instances where the relationship with the independent contractor is deemed like open, because it might be like an accountant that that's going to last forever. You're an engineering firm and you have accountants, and you um, expect for them to continue being your accountants for a long time. That's no problem. But then we need to make sure that the accountants are set up as an independent business. And when you are able to show that, the independent contractor is totally set up as an independent business, or even registered with the state, or they pay their taxes in a certain way, and I am not involved in their day to day, and I'm not their only client. They have many clients. They're just an independent business. Then the length of that relationship is not as relevant. But if you're dealing with a smaller independent contractor that has less clients and such, then that relationship must be subject to review every so often. I recommend between a year and 18 months, the longest, that you should, by contract, hire an independent contractor. And then after that length of time, you review again where you're at with the tasks, with the services that you have contracted, and you decide whether to renew or not to renew. And the reasons for the renewal should also make part of the written contract, should also be included in there. Now, another important factor that has always been a factor, this is not new. Well, none of this is new, but we had simplified the thing, and now we are going back to 6 analysis points. And the fourth of those analysis points is our criteria: the nature and degree of control. If you direct the independent contractor on how to do something, and when to do it, and how much of it to do, and within what time frame to do it, then that's an employee. That's the degree of control you exert in an employment relationship. It's not when you think of it like this: when you hire independent contractors, you are looking for a specific outcome, and you judge, and you focus on the result. If the result is not what you expected, then there are negotiations as to price or a redo or something, but you are not really controlling. Think of it as if your plumbing went berserk in your house, and you called a plumber to fix it. Well, you're not going to tell the plumber, do this pipe, place this pipe here, do this, use this screw, use this other tool to do this or the other. You just tell them, I have this problem with this kitchen sink, fix it. And independent contractors, that's the way it should go. You are hiring for a specific result, as opposed to employees where the relationship allows for direction and, management of how things are done. And then the fifth criteria is the extent to which the work performed is an integral part of the employer's business, of the company's business. So the IRS also uses this rule. If what you are trying to hire an independent contractor for is what you in essence do, the what of your business, then that's not a valid classification. Because if you are, if you are in the business of making manufacturing cakes or pastries, and then you hire people a particular pastry. Your specialty are Danishes, and then you hire people to do Danishes within your premises, then that's not a valid classification, because that's the core of your business. That's what you do. This is as opposed to like an accountant that would help your pastry business keep the books in order, or an attorney that will help you keep the business in order, in check, and or an insurance agent that will help you keep your bakery in check, or your pastry business in check. If you are hiring someone to do the core of what you do, then that's a classification that is suspect. There might be valid reasons. That's why this is an analysis, and it's not a one-off thing. And it's not, if you meet all this criteria, then you're okay. And if you don't, you're not okay. That's not the way this analysis works. There is room for accommodation, but then we need to understand the reasons why you are hiring more people to do Danishes or pastries as independent contractors. It might be like a particular contract that is a one-time contract. So that might justify your hiring people as independent contractors for a very limited amount of time. So just be mindful that although these are the criteria, then the reasons behind the criteria are also very important. Then the sixth criteria is specialized scale and initiative. So we need to look into the degree of specialty, when hiring independent contractors. Typically, you are not going to hire the receptionist in your organization. That role is not qualified to be an independent contractor, unless, of course, there's a management company that manages your organization. But that's another type of business model. But if you are just wanting someone to mind the phones, and you say, well, I need a receptionist, but I cannot do payroll, I cannot have that particular post as a payroll post, I'm going to do independent contractor, but know that that degree of specialty is so low that it does not qualify for it to be done by an independent contractor. And that's going to be a red flag, and that's going to cost an audit. Because what happens if there are suspicions that you have misclassified employees as independent contractors, that there's an audit, and after the audit you get the results of the audit, and if the results of the audit is that you misclassified, then you owe that employee all the employment benefits they can collect up through 3 years. It accrues 3 years for 3 years, and then also the taxes that have been incorrectly paid are also subject to collection. So we want to avoid this particular situation at all costs. Know that this is happening in 2024. And the other thing that we need to be very aware of is that the Corporate Transparency Act is going into effect January 1st of 2024. And if you have a business that is registered through a state authority, like through the State Department or the Texas State Department, then you have a reporting duty, and you need to file certain information with the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, what's called FinCEN for short. Again, that's the Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and that starts on January 1st. There are there's a lot of time within 2024 to bring your organizations into compliance, but it has to be done. If you were registered, even if you're a solo practitioner and you have an LLC, then there you go, it applies. The other thing that we need to really become aware of for 2024 is the fact that last August there was a proposal to increase the salary requirements of exempt employees, right? And it's been proposed for it to go from $684 per week to $1,059 per week. So that's in the proposal stage, and it needs to the commentary ended, and we are now waiting for the Labor Department to finalize on this particular issue on whether that minimum salary requirement is going through, or we're not going to see that at all. And that's about it. That's what we need to be aware of for 2024. And definitely, we would love to. I see that we are being joined by Sol Thomas. Yay! She's our guest today. And, Sol is a very special individual. And she has impressive resume. And she is a state investigator and a criminal justice adjunct instructor for the University of St. Thomas. And she has worked with the Texas House of Representatives. And would love to I would love for Thomas to talk to us a little bit about her work, about her trajectory, because I first, I met Sol the first time I was here in Texas, because she had, she was, she asked women entrepreneurs in the Houston area, Latina entrepreneurs, to meet so that we could support each other. And that was amazing. And that was an amazing experience. And she's always looking for community. She's always nurturing communities, Latino communities, but really, she's such an amazing public servant that I would love to see her. I don't know if she's able to turn on the camera. I don't know if she's able to hear me.
Yes,
Can you hear
I
me?
hear you.
Hi,
Um,
Sal. How are you?
Hi, Viv.
Welcome, welcome,
Thank you so
welcome.
much. Thank you for the invitation. I'm sorry, but my video camera is not working. I'm gonna keep
It's
trying. I'm gonna keep
it's
trying to fix it.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm so happy you were able to join us, because we have a special treat. I thought of you. You have had so many leadership roles in our community, and you are such a great example. And when we've talked at times, we've sort of hinted, there's this thing for our community that it's about the imposter syndrome type of thing that we've
Yes.
all struggled with, and it's particularly women who own businesses, women in male-dominated fields, and all
Yes.
of that. And then I thought of, I don't know if you know about Reshma Surjani, and she's an attorney, and she gave a commencement speech for Smith College this past May, and I
Uh-huh.
thought we could hear it to get all together, because it's so inspirational. So, and I think we can comment a little bit about it. So Sandra, I know, has had prepared it, and maybe we can share it now. I
Yes.
don't know if it's ready to go.
Me all the time. Reshma, how do I overcome imposter syndrome? Class of 2023, I am done answering that question, and y'all can hold me to it. Because you see, imposter syndrome, it's not my problem to solve, and it's not yours either. So today, if you'll humor me, I want to squeeze in one last history lesson before we leave this place. Let's go back to the 1890s, a few short decades after Smith was founded. Doctors had identified a never-before-seen medical malady, one that threatened to wreak havoc on the entire female population. That condition was called bicycle face. You see, the original bicycle had one gigantic wheel in the front and one tiny little wheel in the back. Imagine a hula hoop and a dinner plate. Not easy to ride. But then along comes this revolutionary concept. 2 wheels of the same size. Go figure. The power of equality, baby. And as a result, cycling takes off. And it takes off in Europe and North America, and it takes off for women. But with the rise of women riding the bicycle comes the rise of bicycle face. Here are the symptoms of this terrifying condition. These are direct quotes, by the way. Flushed cheeks, hard clenched jaw, bulging eyes, an expression that is either anxious, irritable, or at best, stony. That's right. Long before there was resting bitch face, there was resting bike face. Now here's the thing. It wasn't just women who were riding bicycles. In fact, the majority of those who had taken up the hobby were men. But bicycle face? That was strictly a woman's disease. Why? Because bicycle face was invented to purely scare women off their wheels. Here's what was really going on. Back then, the bicycle became a symbol for a growing feminist movement. All of a sudden, women could go further and faster, and they didn't need to wait around for a gentleman to show up with his horseback and give them a ride. Suffragists could now meet with one another from town to town, and they would take their signs and they would affix them to the front of their handlebars. Because of the bicycle, women even started wanting different clothes. Victorian hoop skirts? Psh, so last season. Women wanted breezy bloomers, better for pedaling. As one magazine wrote in 1896, to men, the bicycle was merely just a new toy. But to women, it was the steed upon which they rode into the new world. Of course, it wasn't long before men started seeing bikes as more than just a new toy, too. To them, bicycles and the behavior they were enabling with women were jarring, dangerous, threatening to the status quo. More than a century later, we can see bicycle face for what it is, or what it was. Not a medical mistake, but a deliberate tool, a strategy wielded by powerful men to put women back in their place, to make us stop pedaling. Ridiculous name aside, I think that there's something deeper here. I think that there's a lot we can learn about imposter syndrome from bicycle face. Both of them are strategies used to hold women back, and it's up to us to not take the bait. The way our culture talks about imposter syndrome, you also could mistake it for a medical condition, but it's not. Leslie Jamison wrote about the origins of the phrase in The New Yorker a few months ago, and she talked about how the 2 researchers who had first talked about imposter syndrome didn't call it an imposter syndrome at all. In fact, they referred to it as imposter phenomenon, and it was based on high-achieving white ladies. It was never meant to be pathologized. Still, like bicycle face before it, imposter syndrome was rooted in misogyny. It's no coincidence that the concept first emerged as Title IX became law and women started going to college, or that it gained traction just as Roe v. Wade was decided And now that women had control over their bodies, they were starting to enter the workforce in droves. Just like bicycle face before it, imposter syndrome was a reaction to women's progress. But this time, the backlash was even more insidious, which is why today, instead of telling you how to overcome imposter syndrome, we're going to question the whole concept. And I want to do that by breaking down some lies we're told about imposter syndrome, starting with the big one, that maybe there's something wrong with you, that imposter syndrome is grounded in actual deficiency. Imagine you're riding a bicycle up a hill, and as you pedal your way to the top, you fixate on your destination and you clench your jaw. That doesn't mean that you have bicycle face. That means you're riding a bicycle. Imposter syndrome is based on the premise that we're the problem. That if we feel underqualified, it's because we are. That if we worry that we don't have what it takes, it's because we don't. But in my experience, I have found that discomfort, anxiety to just be a natural human reaction. You know, when I showed up at that fancy corporate law firm for the very first time, I had not just one, but 2 Ivy League postgraduate degrees. But still, I felt like everybody was speaking a different language. And that's because they were. So many people there had unearned privileges that I didn't. Big law firms were built by and for people who didn't look like me. So it's normal to feel like you don't fit in when you don't fit in. So as much as I love Taylor Swift, it's me. Hi. I'm not the problem. It's not me. And it's not my responsibility to fix the problem. That's our second lie. That's your job to fix yourself. If your face is flush at the end of a bicycle ride, I wouldn't tell you to powder your nose. But that's pretty much what we do when it comes to imposter syndrome. That's the message that we send to you all, that it's your job to make it go away, or at least cover it up. I'm sure you've heard all the tips and tricks. Get yourself a mentor. Learn how to say no. Power pose your way to the top. There are countless, countless books and articles out there. And yes, I'm counting my own on that list. For years, I too have been telling women how to overcome imposter syndrome. And look, none of it is bad advice per se. I really do believe that we should focus less on being perfect and more on being brave. But all those shoulds, they're just ultimately another burden that we put on women that is just not solving the problem. A great example of this is the gender pay gap. You know, in the United States, the gender pay gap has not budged in 2 decades. 2 decades. But still, we keep telling women that you all should, one by one, know your worth, slay your negotiation, ask for more, when instead we should just be telling companies to pay women fairly. Right? Provide salary transparency, offer paid leave and childcare, both proven to close the pay gap. Companies, not individual women, have the power to erase disparities overnight. Similarly, though, when it comes to imposter syndrome, the unspoken assumption is that if you don't stick up for yourself and you feel like an imposter, it's your own fault. It's extraordinarily unfair and it's unhelpful if we really care about closing the gender gap. The problem, the solution, is just bigger than any one of us. And that brings me to my third and final lie, which is that imposter syndrome is inevitable. So if we don't fix ourselves, what do? We go to the source. The notion of bicycle face was debunked by Dr. Sarah Hackett Stevenson. She was the first ever woman admitted to the American Medical Association. She didn't tell women to fix their bicycle face. And she certainly didn't tell them to stop pedaling. She challenged the entire premise. When as many as 82% of women report feeling imposter syndrome, it's hard to believe that this is just about individuals. Imposter syndrome is the result of structural inequality, not individual inadequacy.
That's an amazing, and hey, there you are. Hi. So that's it. 2024 is the year to debunk it. No, no more imposter syndrome. We structurally, we embrace our roles and just, expect that whatever is systemically wrong, it gets fixed, and we ask it to be fixed. We don't need to fix ourselves. There's nothing wrong with us.
Yes, Yvette. It's such a great subject. I had an event, I believe 2 years ago, on the Latina imposter syndrome. There was a book written by various Latina authors. I remember it was a buzzword 2 or 3 years ago, before COVID. My times are off now because of the COVID stuff. They're still off. But before COVID, that was a big buzzword. And I remember having an event. And when I heard you say that before the video started, immediately what came to mind was, now after a lot more experiences, I realized that it isn't our problem. It isn't our problem. And but it took a lot of different experiences to come to that place to say, inequality in our organizations, in systemic inequality is such a big job. And we need communities like this one, just different allies, women, men that are allies, to come together and figure out how we can affect systemic change. And I went to the 88th legislative session as a fellow this in January of 2023. And what I've learned there is policy is a really important, state policy, federal policy is a really important way, an impactful way to change systems. And it's not all about the individual dealing with the syndrome, because it really isn't at an individual level. It's not our fault, and it's not our problem all the time. And it's like the video said, yes, a lot of that good advice, it's great advice, be confident, but I can be confident all day long. And this just happened to me 2 weeks ago. I cannot change someone's mind. If they believe that women do not belong in policing, I cannot change them. I can work my hands to the bones and try to be perfect so that they can see that women do belong in male-dominated fields. But at the end of the day, I don't have control over that. I may or may not change that person's mind. And that has relieved so much anxiety and stress when we say it is not all on us. I have confidence.
Yes.
And sometimes I'm like, I am confident. I do, I work and I get involved and I speak my mind. I raise my hand and I share my ideas. Yeah. But it's like the video said, it's something bigger than us. And it is very stressful to try to overcome that and change that in a day, in a month, in a year, in 10 years, in 20 years. Individually, we can't do that. As a young person, I used to believe in that because I heard it a lot. One person can make a difference, and we can. But when we're talking about systemic issues, it's going to take communities, it's going to take state representatives, it's going to take federal representatives, our judges, all of these people that are creating our policies and our laws. And that's one part of it.
Definitely. So, I mean, it's like you were saying, with NAWBO, it wasn't until 1985, not 1885, not 1985, until women were allowed, right? There was a way for them to legally have businesses to their names and credit cards and all of that. It wasn't like 100 years ago. It was like more like 30 years ago. And it's like there's still a lot of work to be done, but coming together is the way to do it, to deal with systemic issues, right? And not saying, because it is very convenient for those in power to say, oh, this behooves individuals. This is each one's responsibility, right?
Mhm.
But then, because collectively it would makes it's threatening to them, when communities come together and request changes, systemic changes, because there's power in community, there's power in groups. That's why the theme is, no, let's make this about each individual person, and in this case, it's each individual women. They need to deal with this thing, and it's like, no, we're good. It's good if we come together and do it as a group, right? So organizations like NAWBO, that's what we do. And I know you do it with the community. I know you strive for that unity, and you are working with very sensitive issues. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so I've spent a total of 15 years in the law enforcement field and criminal investigations, and now I'm doing civil investigations. And so I've spent all of my career in male dominated fields where women consist of maybe 5% of the workforce within that field. And I've learned a lot from this field, but I've also taken on a lot of stress. Everything that was mentioned, as far as this imposter syndrome. But what I've learned and what I'm doing now, whereas before I was doing Latinas Rising, which was an advocacy group revolving around advocating for or educating the public on a lot of different social issues involving women. And I did that for 4 years, 2017 through 2021, right before the pandemic. And I just, now I'm taking some time to work on myself. And I think that's another part of trying to deal with systemic inequalities, is the stress that comes onto that individual, whether you're a woman, whether you're another protected class, there is stress individually the systemic issues and inequalities cause. And so I'm at that place now where I've had to pull away from the community, working within the community, to work within myself, to try to heal what those inequalities leave behind.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I said that's one part of it is community, but the other part is actually individual work that you have to do to heal from the effects of the inequality.
Yeah.
And that's
That's amazing. That's amazing advice. And I was just going to ask you, for younger generations that are sometimes, what I hear is a bit of hopelessness in it all, and not as a gripe, but just this lack of, this is not going to get better, right? Type of idea. what would you say to the younger generations having those thoughts and feelings?
Yes, I'm raising two. I have a Gen A child, Generation A, and I
Alpha,
have a yes, and I have a Generation Z.
Z.
And so to them, their Generation Z child is about to enter the workforce in a couple of years. And one of the things that we're focusing in our family is teaching ways to be resilient, to build hope, and it's revolving around spirituality.
Okay.
Right. And we talk about business and politics and all that. But I think that foundationally, whatever spirituality you have, whatever foundation you have, it has to be strong. Because it's like you said, this systemic inequality is not going to take a month, 2 months to fix. It may be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So what do the kids do right now to live within this unequal society? All those extra stresses they have now with social media, with just constantly being bombarded by different messages. And it's teaching them resilience and hope through spirituality. That's what I'm teaching my children and that's what I would tell young people. And that's what I would tell my students at the University of St. Thomas is make sure that you have a foundation of values, of ethics, wherever those may come from. It may be from different religions, different spiritualities, but have those foundations because you're going to need them to deal with the brokenness in our world and the brokenness in our systems.
Wow. Yes. Yes. That's the workplace trend that I've talked about, which is particularly with Gen Z, the portion of Gen Z that has already gone into the workforce, that some of them are, they're having a tendency toward nihilism. And the explanation is that because Gen Z was raised by parents from a generation that were deconstructing a lot of things, religion, parenting, social issues, gender issues, since a lot of deconstruction went about and there was nothing substituted that. There's a void there's a void that because all that got deconstructed, but nothing replaced it, right? So in that search, that's an amazing advice as well. Any other words of encouragement that you would like to leave for women starting businesses or just anyone, starting a journey with their own thing, their own business for 2024?
Yes, I think going back to making sure you're taking care of yourself as, fulfilling your needs spiritually, emotionally, physically. I'm still trying to work on the exercise, but exercise is it's healing for a lot of things, for stress, for diseases, it's prevention for a lot of stress caused diseases. I think for me, after, having a very stressful career, and then finding myself trying to figure out how do I deal with that, the knowledge of those 15 years in the system or in the systems.
Yeah.
And it comes back to me. Do I have a foundation of everything that I just mentioned? Ethics, values, principles to come back to. Because we live with broken systems and broken people and broken world, and if we're not okay, how do we expect our businesses, our schools, you know, the people that we interact with, how are we going to, what are we going to give if we have not healed some of those broken parts?
Yeah. Not from an empty cup. We can't give from an empty cup, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I would share with everyone is make sure that those values are solid, your ethics are solid, all those building blocks are so important for you to deal with inequality and broken systems. And just to end this, I actually, had something happen to me 2 weeks ago with, a male saying that they didn't believe, women could do a job. And there was I had to make a decision, right? Do I get offended? I mean, I was offended, but what do I do about it?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of options, especially in the workforce. You can go to HR, you can file complaints. But what we don't talk about is at times we need to pick our battles. I know that's kind of something that we get taught from the very beginning when we go into the workforce. But forgiveness, the concept of forgiveness, and how does forgiveness applied in a professional setting? And for me, I'm still exploring that with this recent thing that happened to me, but it actually has helped heal that wound, that fresh wound that happened 2 weeks ago. And that's ultimately what I'm looking for. In order for me to have hope and to keep going and to keep working within a male-dominated field,
Yes,
is I have to heal from those hits. And part of it is forgiveness.
wow, I love that so much. So, and I think we forget about that, and sometimes we feel forgiveness is for big issue things, and it's not. It's also a human superpower, and we can use it in our everyday lives and at work as well. So thank you so much for that. And I'm wishing you an amazing 2024 as well, to everyone that has joined us or that will join us in Let's Talk Advocacy. Thank you for your support. And remember to join us in our conference coming in January 18th. So all the details are, there you go. That's our conference, and we are still having registrations going on. We're happy to have you, and we will see you then at the conference. Bye. Happy 2024.